Okay, so let's see who else is with us. We've got Gerard Baileyfeld from the butcher shop in Gaborone. Welcome, welcome. We've got Louis and Martin joining us from Gaborone as well. Welcome, guys. It's very nearby. I think it's with a 1 hour flight. Guys, welcome to those of you who are watching the recording on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. If you are watching live, you also are most welcome to watch the recording. Sometimes we do need to repeat and to practice the skills in order to get them to really sink in. If you have just joined us, I see 53 people in the room. We're going to kick things off in about 10 seconds. Okay, lots and lots of people still taking their seats, so welcome, welcome. Make yourself comfortable. And as the clock strikes 0, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dan Stillerman. I'm the founder of Excel Academy, and I'm very excited to be here and to take you on this Excel PivotTable Masterclass journey for the next hour. So thank you very much for registering and for arriving on time. And without anything further from me, I'm going to hand over to Sebastian from Mazars to do a brief introduction and welcome. Over to you, Sebastian.
Thank you, Dan. I just would like to take 1 minute to welcome all of you, all the participants, on behalf of Mazars. It's not the first time we are organizing an event with our colleagues from other countries in Africa. I would like to say a big thank you to all of them, to all my partners in other countries. For the participants who don't know Mazars, well, we are today an international audit firm. We are present in 90 countries, including 25 in Africa, about 10 in Middle East, and we are what we call an integrated partnership. So my colleagues actually from Botswana, Nigeria, and I saw other countries, Saudi Arabia, are not only colleagues, but are my partners. And that's the reason why we do events together like this. I would like to say a big, big thank you to Dan and Evie. So for all of you participants, I have a secret to tell you. You have the 2 best Excel trainer in all Africa, probably in front of you. It's been a few years we work together now, and I have to say that you will be impressed by the quality of the training. I highly recommend you to contact them after the training if you like it, to have to organize for yourself and for your company new trainings. And regarding Mazars, we will probably send a thank you email after this today, where we will give you all the details. Don't hesitate to contact us. All the managing partners of the countries are probably part of the call today. They will be happy to answer all your questions after the training. I won't be longer than that. Thank you, Dan and Evie, again. And I'm leaving the call now. Let it to you. Good luck and see you very soon.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. And to all of you who have joined us, I know a lot of people have just entered the room. Welcome and thanks for joining us. You're more than welcome to pop us a message in the chat. We'd love to know where in the world you're joining us from. What I've also done is I've just popped a message into the chat box with the link for you to click to download the documents for today's masterclass session. It's an Excel file as well as 2 cheat sheet PDF documents. Okay, I'm going to click on the link now and I'm going to share my screen so we can see what I'm talking about here. Okay, when you click on the link, you should arrive at this page. It says Excel Pivot Tables Masterclass. You know it's the right page, and you simply click on the green button, download my Excel file and cheat sheets. Zoom as well so I can see all the interactions. Okay, and while this file downloads, you can see it's just under 2 gigabytes. I'm going to click on the arrow here. You'll see that I'm in Google Chrome. You're probably in the same browser. I'm going to show in folder, in my downloads folder, and there it is. It's got a funny string of text, but we don't need to worry about that. We are just going to click into the zipped folder. Okay, you can see it's in the downloads folder, and there's a spreadsheet, an Excel file called Data Pivot Tables Masterclass. But before we get there, let's take a quick look at this keyboard shortcuts cheat sheet. I think you'll really enjoy this. This is a special keyboard shortcut cheat sheet. It's a resource which has been specially designed by us to help you to work smarter when it comes to Excel. And not just Excel, because many of these keyboard shortcuts you can actually apply into your into your day-to-day work across other Microsoft Office applications and even across other applications on your computer. As an example of becoming more of a keyboard person, we like to believe that there's two types of computer users or Excel users: mouse people and keyboard people. Maybe you can take a moment to think, what are you? Maybe you're 50-50, or maybe you're much more heavily on the mouse. Whatever the case may be, we're encouraging you to become more of a keyboard person. We are big believers in keyboard shortcuts. After all, they're called shortcuts for a reason, because they do save us time and help us to work more efficiently. So as an example, if we're working in a PDF, we can actually press Control-L, and that takes us into full screen mode, which is quite nice. And I'm going to hold Control and scroll out with the wheel on the mouse. Okay, and that zooms out. And here I can see it in nice full screen view. I can see the whole of the first page. And when I press the right arrow, I can go to the second page. So this is a 2-page document. If we were with you in person, we would give it to you a physical copy, but you've now got a digital copy, which you can keep on your computer. You can print it out. You might want to print it double-sided and laminate it. And you can see it's got some really nice alphabetical shortcuts and different themes: navigation, selection, formatting, etc. I'm going to press Escape to get out of that mode, and now I'm back here. I'm going to press Alt and Tab to switch me between windows. Now, we speak a lot about Windows, and Avi was reading my mind there, because we wanted to know, we actually do want to know from you, are you using a Windows PC or Apple Mac when you are working on Excel? For the most part, I know sometimes people have both devices. If you do use it 50-50, your Windows and your Mac, then you can say 50-50, but I can see the overwhelming majority, 98% of you so far. You can actually see this over here. This is the poll that's currently in progress. You can see 98% of you saying Windows PC. Okay, so that's really good. There's one person who has said 50-50, so that gives us a really good indication that we can focus primarily on the Windows-based keyboard shortcuts. We don't need to pay too much attention today to Mac shortcuts. Sometimes they are a bit different. Okay, if you are a Mac user at all, you are welcome to open up this particular file, which is the keyboard shortcuts for Mac. Okay, so let's open up the Excel file. I'm going to double click. Remember, this is currently in this zipped folder. Okay, that's not the file. That's just the Excel file that was currently open. Okay, and I'll actually just show you. This is the number of people who registered for this particular event. This is a pivot table. So here is the data, and this is a pivot table. So I used the skills that we're going to show you and teach you step by step today to summarize the data. And using this pivot table, I knew inherently that we had people from Botswana, from Ghana, Nigeria, Qatar, and 22 people who had registered from other countries. So that is very nice, very useful, and we're going to show you exactly how to create a pivot table just like this. And even beyond this, we're going to show you some additional techniques and tricks which are going to really help. So let's go back to the Excel file that we have downloaded. As you can see, I've got this yellow bar up at the top. This might look quite familiar. It says, be careful, files from the internet can contain viruses. So this is just a warning. We know that we can trust this file because it's from us. So I'm going to click Enable Editing. And what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to use that same Control key and the wheel on the mouse to zoom in. Okay, I could have also zoomed in using the zoom bar over here. Okay. And what you can see is now that the text is quite large, and therefore it should be nice and clear for you with the Zoom screen share. Okay. The next thing I want to do is orientate myself around this particular workbook. Okay, the workbook is called Data Pivot Tables Masterclass. It's also read-only, okay, and that's because it's downloaded off the internet. And I see that there's one sheet tab, and it's called Sheet 1. Now, that's something that Avi and I don't really enjoy, is Book 1, Sheet 1, very generic names. Okay, so instead of Sheet 1, I'm going to call this Data. How did I do that? I double-clicked on the Sheet tab, and I typed in the word Data, and I pressed Enter. The next thing I want to do is I want to save this in a location that works for me. It's not a good practice to actually work in Excel within a zipped folder that's been downloaded, sometimes a temporary folder. It's not a good idea. It sometimes causes issues, and it's definitely a good habit to be in, to actually save it in a folder that's practical for you. And very often it makes sense to save it in a cloud-based storage and sharing applications such as Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive. So those of you, 98% of you working mostly on a Windows computer, you can press the F12 key on your keyboard. Okay, you might need to hold down the function key, which is Fn, and F12, because maybe F12 does something else. Very often those F keys are shared with other commands such as brightness or volume or printing. Okay, so I've pressed F12. You can see it wants to save it in the same local temporary folder, but I would like to actually save it into, where is it? It's the PivotTables Dropbox. I think it's this folder. Okay, pivots March AME. Okay, and I'm going to call it, I'm going to take away the copy of, and I'm going to say data PivotTables Masterclass, and I'm actually going to put DS over there because you can see I've got the original file over here, and I want to save this with another name so that I control the actual version, and I know that this particular version I've been working on. So I'm going to press enter, and there we go. Now I've saved it as DS. You can see it saved over here. And because it's in Dropbox, it's going to synchronize within a couple of seconds with Abby, who's sitting remotely. We're not in the same building, not in the same office. We're working remotely, but we know that it's synchronizing straight away. And also, Excel has an auto recover or auto save feature. I'm going to click on the File tab. And in case you didn't know this, you've got options in the bottom left-hand corner. This is very useful. What I might want to do is increase the font size, because that would increase the overall font size as well as the formula bar and the name box. So I can do that. Okay, but it's going to require me to close Excel and reopen it. So I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, but what I am going to do is I'm going to click on save, and just to show you that Excel does save and auto recover every 5 minutes, and I can adjust that if need be. So I know that every 5 minutes Excel will auto save my work, but even more frequently than that, I'm going to press Control S. So that's a great habit to be in. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment and take a deep breath, because when we approach a new Excel data set, it's always a good idea to take a deep breath, compose ourselves, not get overwhelmed, and really to think and have a look carefully and try and understand what exactly are we looking at here. Okay, so with that in mind, we take a look. In cell A1, we see full name. Okay, then we see workshop, we see progress, we see sign in count. I can see the full label over here in the formula bar because it's getting cut off there. The columns are all quite narrow, uniform width, and we'll fix that up over the next few minutes. We also see a last activity column, an SAST column, and a member since column. Okay, so we've got 7 columns of data. Now, I want to see from you any idea. I want to see in the chat, if you have an idea, how do we get to the bottom of this data set very quickly? Because I know that if I hold down the down arrow, that's going to take me quite a while. See there, it's quite slow. I might want to press page down. Is there any way for me to jump down to the bottom of the data? Okay, Dilip, Control and End. That is a great idea. Thank you for that. I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to press Control End, and it takes me to the end of the data. It takes me to the last cell that has anything in it. So well done. That's fantastic. And I see that I'm now in row number 8,367. There's quite a lot of data. All relative, it depends. You might have worked with data which is much, much larger than this, or this might be the biggest set of data you've ever seen. Either way, it's 8,367 rows. And another shortcut which is very useful is what we call the teleporter shortcut. We want to jump up to the top of this particular column, column G. We can press Control and the up arrow. Okay, and then to get to the left-hand side, Control and the left arrow. To get down to the bottom of column A, we can press Control and the down arrow. Control right, Control up, left, right, down. Okay, you can take a few moments to practice that. That was one of the first keyboard shortcuts that I learned, that my boss taught me during my first couple of weeks at my first job working as an actuary, when I was really overwhelmed with Excel. And going into my first job, I thought I was an expert, and I got a big fright when I realized that there's so much to learn. You don't know what you don't know. That old cliche, and it's true very often when it comes to Excel, because there's a whole world of opportunity to learn and to discover new, better, smarter ways of doing things. And that's what we love helping people with at Excel Academy. Okay, so thank you, Avi, for posting all the shortcuts into the chat box. I'm going to go over that very briefly again. I simply hold down the Control key on my keyboard and I press the different arrow keys one at a time. So Control and the up arrow, and that jumps me up and it teleports me. It takes me in the blink of an eye up to the top of the list. And when I go back down, Control down arrow. And now, what about if I'm curious? Okay, I like to be curious and ask questions. What about going to the very end, the last row in Excel? How many rows are there in Excel? Many people think that there's an infinite number of rows. In fact, if we press Control and the down arrow key, we notice that there are 1,048,576 rows in Excel. Okay, that might seem like a random number. It is, in fact, a binary number. It's 2 to the power of 20. In case you're wondering, we can do it very, very briefly. Equals 2 to the power of 20. And there is the number, 1,048,576. How do I get rid of the data in that cell? I simply press the delete button on the keyboard. And now I can press Control and the home button to get me back to cell A1. Okay, to take me all the way home, Control and the home button, it takes me to cell A1. You might have a small keyboard on a laptop, in which case the home key is shared with the left arrow and the end key is shared with the right arrow key. And in that case, in order to access the home button, you have to press FN and the left arrow. Okay, so you just need to have a look. Keyboards vary across different laptop or computer brands and also across different countries. So just take a look at that. Once again, if you have a look here at the keyboard shortcut cheat sheet, we've got Control and the different arrow keys to navigate us around. And there's a whole bunch of other keyboard shortcuts that we'll be covering and some that we won't be covering that you can play around with, because that keyboard shortcut cheat sheet belongs to you. Okay, so before we actually convert our data into a pivot table, it's a good idea and it's good practice to prepare our data. Otherwise, we're going to try and put it into a really nice pivot table dashboard or summary, but the data is not ready for it yet. So the first few steps involve prep steps, preparation for a pivot table. So we've got this data set, and one of the first things that we teach in our Excel 202 online course is actually to convert this ordinary plain data into what's known as a table in Excel. Okay, maybe you've seen this before, but chances are that this will be something new for you. What we're going to do is we're going to stand somewhere inside the data set. What do I mean by that? I'm standing somewhere on the data. I'm not standing outside in the empty space over here. I'm making sure that my mouse cursor is somewhere on the data, and I hold down the Control key and I press the letter T for table. And that's quite nice, because what it does is it says create a table. Where is the data for your table? You can see that it's selected it for us. It's preempted the scope or the range of the data, which is A1 to G8367. You'll notice some dollar signs. That just means that it's a fixed or absolute range of cells in Excel. And it's noticed that my table has headers. So Excel is smart. Excel can see that we've got headers. That's good practice to actually have headers. Otherwise, you don't know what the columns mean. And then we simply click OK, or we press Enter on the keyboard. And often, when we used to run training in person before COVID, we used to get a collective ooh, because this is really nice. It's a way to format our data, convert our data into a much more user-friendly format than the plain black and white format that we had previously. So just with one keyboard shortcut, Control T, we've changed the look and feel and usability of our data set entirely. And let's take a brief look at what we've got. We notice straight away the headings are in a different color, a different style. You can see white, bold text, so it draws attention to the headings. We notice the sort and filter buttons. If I click there, you can see that I can sort and filter quite easily. You also notice that there are 4 unique workshops in this particular column, and that's important because we are going to see that once again when we convert the data into a pivot table. Okay, and what you can see as well is we've got alternating blue and white stripes. What we also see is a brand new tab on the top of the ribbon. This section up at the top of our Excel screen is known as the ribbon. It's almost like wrapped across the top of the screen like a ribbon. And if we have a look here, we'll notice that when we hover our cursor over a specific button or feature, we get a tip. It actually tells us what that feature does. So you can see display banded rows in which even rows are formatted differently from odd rows. Okay, and it actually makes tables easier to read. If we uncheck that, you can see that it's maybe not as easy to read without those banded rows. You can see you can do a similar thing with the columns. You might want to draw specific attention to the last column or the first column. You can also, if you want, you can include a total row. You'll notice that this doesn't mean much. Okay, instead, what we might want over there is a count to see 8,366 records or rows. I'm going to press Control Home again to get back up to the top, and I can switch off the total row if I want. Okay, I can also switch off the header row if I ever want to turn the headings on or off. I can also turn the filters on or off over here. And if you don't have that button, it means that you're probably on an older version of Excel, which is perfectly okay. You can actually access the filter button on the data tab. Okay, I've now done some work on my Excel file, so I'm going to press Control S. Okay, we've got load shedding here in South Africa. I see there were, I saw one person joining us from Cape Town. There might be more people in South Africa, and maybe in other countries in Africa, it's a reality. I'm not sure, but we've got rolling blackouts. So you never know when the power is going to go off and when you might, your computer might die. So it's really a good habit to be in to save our work very, very regularly. Okay, so I've saved my work, and what we were talking about is all these features on the table design tab. Now, when I stand in the middle of this white space on the right-hand side, you'll notice that my table design tab disappears, and that's because it's a contextual tab. What's the word? Contextual. Why? Because it appears when we're in context. Okay, so when we're in the context of a table, then I get the table design tab. What's quite nice as well is I can hover my mouse cursor over these different styles because this is the default, and I personally like this. I know that Avi likes this orange style over here. I like this one, and I've tried to actually set this as my default style, and it seems to revert to the original defaults, but maybe that will work at some stage. I'm going to save my work once again. This is quite nice. It draws even more attention to the headings in blue, and then it's got a subtle gray and white stripe for the banded rows. Okay, the next thing we're going to do just for the next couple of minutes is we're going to format our data, our numbers in our table. Okay, because we would like the numbers to actually make sense, to tell a story. Instead of being general, generic format, you can see if I click on the Home tab, you'll see these numbers, for example, in column C, it's all formatted in general number format. And you might be thinking these should be percentages. If you were thinking that, you'd be 100% correct. We can format these as percentages using the mouse or the keyboard. I'm going to do it with the mouse first. I'm going to click like this, but I do know, or I'll tell you if you don't know, that when I do this, it actually selects over 1 million cells. It's selecting the entire column C. So whatever we do now, once we've selected our data, it's going to do it to over 1 million cells, which is not very efficient. We actually only want to format 8,366 cells. So the better way to do it here is to use a keyboard shortcut, which is Control and the spacebar. Avi's going to put it in the chat. You'll notice here it's on the cheat sheet as well, Control and spacebar right over there to select the entire column. I'm not going to repeat it now because we're going to get many opportunities to repeat it over the course of this masterclass. The Control spacebar, and then I hover my mouse cursor over the percentage button on the home tab of the ribbon, and I see that it says percent style, Control Shift and percentage. And that's the keyboard shortcut in the brackets, Control and Shift and the percentage. Now, if we have the same keyboard, then you'll have the percentage key above the number 5 at the top of your keyboard. I do believe that that's standard. I don't think there's any variation across other countries and keyboards, but you can let me know if it is the case. I'm going to press Control and Shift and 5, and it's going to format my numbers as percentages. So that's really nice. And when you're working with lots of numbers on a regular basis, it's great to have these keyboard shortcuts for number formatting. For the last activity, you might be thinking that these numbers look quite strange. You might recognize numbers in the 40,000s as dates that have not yet been formatted. If you were thinking that, then you are spot on. Once again, we're going to press Control and spacebar. And this time we're going to press Control and the hash, or sometimes people call it the pound key. It's a hash. It's a hash symbol. Control, how do I get there? For me on my keyboard, it's Shift 3 because it's above the number 3. So I'm going to press Control, Shift, and 3. Avi's going to put it into the chat so you can see it there. And once again, I'm going to go back to my cheat sheet and zoom in just to show you that Control and Shift, and this is the key to use if you're on a South African keyboard, which I think should be the case for some of you. And this is the key to use if you want to convert to percentage format, Control and Shift and one of these keys. So either 3 for date, 5 for percentage, 4 for currency. Let's have a look at that. Control, Shift, and 4, which is the dollar. You can see it's changed it for me here into South African rands. It will probably change it into your default currency. And Control, Shift, and 3. Let's go back to that for date. And we can do the exact same thing for member since. We can press Control and spacebar and then Control, Shift, 3. SAST is the abbreviation for South African Standard Time. And I'm going to press Control spacebar, and the shortcut over here is Control and the @ symbol, which for me is Control, Shift, and the number 2. Okay, Control, Shift, and the number 2, which shows me the time of day. Obviously, if you're in a different time zone, then you would need to +1 or 2 or whatever the case is for your particular time zone. Okay, once again, Control S to save. And just before we convert into a pivot table, it will really help to do something that I mentioned earlier, which is to widen the columns. I did say that some of these columns, the headings or the actual data, you can see particularly here in column A, it's getting cut off. So we're going to do this with the mouse. I'm going to click on this little triangle in between A and 1. And I'm going to take my mouse cursor. You can see it actually changes shape in between column A and B, or B and C, or any of the 2 columns, and I simply double click. When I double click, it auto fits each column to the correct width so that it can fit the longest piece of data in that column. You can see it looks quite wide, but there's obviously a name that's quite wide that goes all the way to the end. And there we go, much better. Now we can read everything. Sometimes if you've got a column that's too narrow, then you get all of these hashtags or pound symbols because the numbers cannot be displayed. So it's really important and useful to know that you can double click between 2 of the columns and it auto snaps it into place. Okay, so it's time to talk about a pivot table. Now that we've prepared our data, we've got it looking good, telling a story. Now we ask the question, what is the progress? If Avi and I are looking at this data, which is actually a real data set, it's a real download from our system where we track the progress of our students as they progress through our different courses or workshops. If we want to get management information, we want to get business insight and intelligence and be able to make decisions on the fly in terms of our business and the progress of our students. Probably a good idea for us to ask the question of, what's the progress overall across all of our workshops in total, average. And then how does that compare to Excel 101 versus 202 versus 303 versus Outlook Secrets? Is there a big difference and a discrepancy? Are there things that we can't see just by looking at this large data set? It is a large data set, as we said, we have 7 columns and we've got 8,366 lines of data. It can be quite overwhelming to try and make decisions looking at all of this data. And that's where pivot tables come in. The analogy that we often draw is if you're driving in a car, you don't necessarily need to know all the ins and outs and nuts and bolts inside your engine. Typically, you drive a car and you have a dashboard which gives you the key summary information, the key performance indicators that help us to make decisions as we're driving the car. For example, if we're going too fast, our speedometer is going to show that maybe we're breaking the speed limit and we need to slow down. If we're revving too high, we can change gear. If our fuel gauge is too low, we can stop and put in some fuel. Okay, if the temperature of the outside is really, really cold, then we might need to wait so that our engine warms up. Okay, so we can make decisions like that on the fly because of our dashboard. We're going to do exactly that using a pivot table in Excel. Now, this is really, really useful. It's powerful stuff. You're going to love it. If you've never used a pivot table before, you might be slightly nervous or apprehensive, and that's okay. It is a new skill for many of you, but you'll be very glad to know that it's not very, very technical. It's not complicated like some Excel formulas and functions, maybe like VLOOKUP that maybe you've tried to do in the past. Pivot tables are really straightforward and flexible, and you are going to enjoy them. Okay, so hovering my mouse cursor over, it says easily arrange and summarize complex data in a pivot table. There's also an FYI there that we can double click on a value in a pivot table and see which detailed values make up the summarized total. Notice that there's sometimes a tell me more. Okay, if you remember the song from the Grease musical, Tell Me More, Tell Me More, what are we asking Excel to tell us? We're asking for some additional help here, and here we have some information on how to create a pivot table. So that's useful to know as well. And I'm going to click on that button, pivot table. So this is going to help me to insert a pivot table based on this data. So it says create pivot table. It's referring to table number 1 automatically. I didn't need to go and pre-select that data. It's automatically selected it, and it's automatically going to place the pivot table report inside a new worksheet. Notice that I have one worksheet tab at the moment. It's going to create a new worksheet tab, and it's going to set me up to build a pivot table in that new worksheet tab. So all I need to do is click OK. Aha. I'm now going to zoom in because it might be a little bit small over here. It says pivot table 2, and just so you can see this, it says to build a report, choose fields from the pivot table field list. I'm going to zoom out a little bit because it actually shows us a little graphic over here, and it's showing us a tick box in one of these specific boxes over here. And there's also these 4 areas down at the bottom. So basically, just to simplify this, this is where our pivot table is going to appear. Okay, but there's nothing yet because we haven't built anything yet. Okay, now we've got pivot table fields on the right-hand side. We've got our column headings. So the pivot table fields correspond to the column headings in our data. Just to remind you, we had, by the way, as I scroll down, you'll notice that it's very convenient that when you're in table mode, instead of the ABC, we see that the column headers have actually merged into the ABC, which is very convenient. If I step out of the table, it goes back to ABC. But as soon as I'm in the table, it's almost done a freeze pane for me. So I can see that it's full name, workshop, progress, etc. And there we have full name, workshop, progress, etc. Okay, I also notice that it says sheet 1. I'm going to double click there and I'm going to say pivot. Okay, and if I follow the instructions that Excel has given me over here, it says to build a report, choose fields from the field list. How do I choose? It's actually showing me a magnifying glass here that I need to tick the box. So the easiest way to get started is actually just to tick one of these boxes. Now, if you remember a couple of minutes ago, I actually said that Avi and I might want to know what is the progress, okay, across the different workshops. So if we want to see what are the different workshop levels, we're going to start by picking the box that says workshop. And as expected, remember I showed you in the filter button, the sort and filter button in the table, that we had 4 unique items. So the pivot table has summarized for us the 4 unique items across those 8,000 and something cells. That's very useful. Okay, but as it stands, this is not that useful because it's not showing me the progress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tick the box that says next to progress. And automatically what it's done is it's put workshop into the rows area over here, and it's put sum of progress into the values. Okay, so it's put the progress field, but it's summing them up, which is not very meaningful for us. Do you agree? What does 4,033 mean? Not so useful, right? 2,143. Grand total, 7,050. Because what it's doing is it sees a bunch of numbers and it instinctively thinks, let's add them up. So it's Excel's way of trying to help us. And in this case, we appreciate the help, but it wasn't exactly what we needed. Okay, so what do we need instead of sum? You want to pop us a message in the chat. What do you think we should be looking at as a calculation instead of the sum calculation? Who thinks that we should change it to, okay, I see average, I see percentage, I see count. Okay, excellent. Thank you for all of those suggestions. Let's go with the first one. Shukurat. Again, I hope I pronounced that correctly. You've indicated, or you've suggested that we use count. So the way to change the calculation is, there's 2 ways to do this. Either we click on the sum of progress, we click on value field settings. Okay, let me go there again. How did I get there? I clicked over here in the bottom on sum of progress, and the last item in this list says value field settings. And now it says, choose the type of calculation that you want to use to summarize data from the selected field, and I can change it to count. Okay, and that's quite useful because when I click OK, it's showing me how many people we have on Excel 101, 202, 303, and Outlook Secrets, totaling what we expected, which is 8366. Okay, so that's very useful. We now know that we can summarize it in terms of a count, and we can get to those value field settings another way. I did mention there are 2 ways. We can also get there by double clicking on the heading. Okay, that's quite nifty, quite useful. We double click on there to change it. We can change the name and we can change the calculation. So we're going to do an average. We want to know what the average progress is. Click OK, and there we go. Very nice. We now have a summary. We see averages. We see many decimal places. For me and Avi, if we're looking holistically at the total progress overall, it's 84.27%, which we're quite happy with. And we can see the progress across the different workshops. Okay, but you might be thinking that these numbers need to be formatted. So what you might want to do is select these cells and then click on the percentage format. But a better way to do it is to format the entire field, because why is a pivot table called a pivot table? Some of you might have heard the word pivot over the last year of lockdown. Tomorrow will be exactly a year since lockdown started in South Africa. We've heard the word pivot many, many times over the last 12 months. And that's because people have talked about how to pivot their business. Okay, so what does that mean? It means twist or turn or pivot around a central point. So here our central point is the data set, and our pivot table lets us slice and dice the data in different ways to present different summaries, different pictures, different perspectives on the same data set. It's all drawing from the same data, but a pivot table lets us slice and dice it in different ways. So what I'm alluding to over here is that the pivot table might change shape. It might be that size, then it might be that size. Okay, so it's better to format the entire field instead of just cells B4 to B8. The way we do that is we go once again into this value field settings by double clicking, and we're going to click on this number format. Okay, and we're going to go to percentage. Okay, we might want only one decimal place. We click OK, we click OK again, and there we go. Much better, 84.3% grand total. And here's our different progress averages across the different workshops. So that's fantastic, and that's really, really useful. And I'm going to press Control S as always to save my work. And now we can start looking at a few other insights and tips and techniques when we're working in a pivot table. Okay, what I want you to notice is that when we stand outside our pivot table, we panic. Okay, why do we panic? Because our field list has gone. Dan, help me, my field list has disappeared. What did I do? Did I break my pivot table? You can relax, take a deep breath. You didn't break your pivot table. The reason it's disappeared is because you are standing outside of your pivot table. As soon as you stand back inside, there you see the field list again. If you close it by mistake, okay, or on purpose, you can always get it back. And once again, we've got a contextual tab. If we're standing in our pivot table, in fact, we have two tabs, Pivot Table Analyze, and we've got Design. Okay, and on the Analyze tab, we see that there's a field list button, which we click, and there we go, we've got it back. Okay. What I want to show you as well is there are actually two ways to get these fields into the areas over here. Okay, remember I showed you that you can tick the workshop tick box. If we untick it, okay, tick it and untick it, what we can do instead of ticking the box is we can click and drag. And there you can see it actually says drag field between areas below. And as an example, if we drag it from the rows to the columns area, what do you see? Instead of row headings, we now have column labels, 101, 202, 303, Outlook Secrets. Okay, you might like that. I personally prefer, and I think Excel prefers as well, to use the row labels by default. Okay, if we go to the Design tab, then in a similar way to the Excel table that we used over here, okay, we can actually change the style. You might prefer something like this, green. I know once again, Avi likes this color over here. I'm going to use this. Okay, I like that. And again, I'm going to do banded rows. So it just makes it slightly easier to read for me. Okay, and that is quite nice. Now, let's say, for example, I want to drill a little bit deeper because I want to know what's happening with these people who are doing Excel 303. Okay, their progress is not up to standard, up to the overall average. It's not terrible. It's not like they haven't gotten started yet. It's maybe not hugely significant, but I might want to investigate and maybe give a few of them a phone call. So what I can do is really, really cool and useful. And I've already told you what the feature is. Excel's told us, because if we go back to the Insert tab, what you'll notice, first of all, is that the Pivot Table button has actually been grayed out. Okay, why has it been grayed out? Because we can't convert a pivot table into another pivot table. We can only convert a data set into a pivot table. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay, so we're currently in a pivot table, so we can't make another pivot table out of this pivot table. But we do notice that the second paragraph over there says, FYI, you can double click on a value to see which detailed values make up the summarized total. So if we want to drill a little bit deeper into this 80.7, we double click and wow, there we go. And there you can notice that it's actually put it in this default, the new default style. And that's quite nice. And I'm going to zoom in. And what do we have here? We actually have a table with the data for the people who have done Excel 303. We don't have any of the other data, so that this is filtered data, very useful. Instead of going to the original data and going and filtering the data for 303 and then copying it and pasting it into another worksheet or workbook, instead, we can just double click on one of the values inside the pivot table, and it creates a brand new sheet tab with the data that we're interested in. And then we can contact these people and find out what's going on with their Excel 303 progress. Okay, I'm going to right click and delete this particular sheet because I don't actually need it. Once again, I'm just going to press Control S because that's habit. And maybe it's a good idea now to talk about what happens if and when your data changes. And maybe some of you have been thinking that, or you've encountered that in your work. The data might change. For example, people's progress will probably improve. Over here, Amina is currently on 14%. And when that number goes up, if we change it to 90%, will the pivot table update automatically? Okay. Also, if we add a new column of data or new people as new rows underneath this data, will the pivot table update automatically and instantaneously? Okay, the answer, in fact, is no. When we go back to our pivot table, what you notice is that right underneath the pivot table analyze tab, this button over here, it says refresh. And there is a keyboard shortcut, which is Alt and the F5 key. And as the rain starts to fall here in Joburg, get the latest data from the source connected to the active cell. Okay, so we need to refresh the pivot table in order to pull the latest data. Okay, so as an example, if we have an extra column of data, okay, I'm going to assume that we now know what the cities are. So I'm going to type in here city in cell H1, and I want to show you how cool this is when I press enter, because watch carefully. When I press enter, did you see what happened? It automatically expanded the table to include the city column. And you can see here there's an auto-correct options with a little lightning bolt, and it says we can undo the table auto expansion. So it automatically expanded the table. If we don't like that, we can undo it. Okay, but we actually do like it. It did 2 steps for us in one go, and we can now enter the cities. And we don't know what cities these people are from, but we can make some assumptions. So I'm going to ask you in the chat, the first 5 people who post their city into the chat, I'm going to use JHB to represent Johannesburg, and let's see what cities are coming through. Okay, we definitely have Gaborone, and we got Doha, Gaborone. Okay, for some reason it wasn't typing. Okay, I'm going to save my work. I'm not sure what exactly is going on here, but it's okay. So misbehaving now. I'm going to go to the other sheet. And in the meantime, thank you, Avi. You're pulling up a poll. Are you finding this useful? We would love to know. We're going to leave that up for 30 seconds as I just close up my other workbook over here and sort out my Excel. We will get back into our work in a couple of moments. Okay, I'm going to save this in documents. Okay, and I'm going to close this particular workbook. Okay, and now, there we go. So for some reason, there was a problem and interference from the other workbook, but that's okay. So I've got Gaborone, I've got Doha, I've got Lagos, and let's see where else. Francistown. Down in Botswana as well. Oh, you can see there's a geography feature as well, which is quite nice. You can get world statistics like population and more. I didn't even know that. Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, so now I've got Joburg, Gaborone, Doha, Lagos, and Francistown. And if I want to repeat those 5 cities all the way down to the bottom, I want a pattern, because otherwise it's going to take me very, very long to type it all in 8,366 times. So what I'm going to do is I am going to double click on the bottom right hand corner. So I'm going to select all 5, double click on the bottom right hand corner. And that is very useful indeed, because we've continued that pattern all the way to the bottom. I'm going to press Control and the down arrow, the teleporter key, and you can see I've got that pattern all the way to the bottom. I'm now going to go back to the pivot sheet. And by the way, Thank you for your responses. It's great to see that 75% of you are saying yes, big time. You're finding this extremely useful, and 22% are saying mostly. I'm going to close that up. Very, very glad to know that at least for the most part, you're finding this extremely useful. Once again, I'm going to go to the pivot table analyze tab because I know I can see here that city has not been added automatically. But as soon as I click refresh, watch over here, it's going to add city. And now I can actually tick the tick box. Okay, let's see what happens. When I tick city, it adds city underneath workshop. So it's put it as an additional row field. It's a secondary field. Okay, the primary field is Excel, well, the actual workshop. Okay, Excel 101, 202, 303. We can switch them around, so I can actually click and drag, and that's quite nice as well because now the primary field is the city. You can see there I've got Doha, Francistown, Gaborone. You can see it's put them alphabetically. Okay, I can also move city into the columns area. So that's really nice as well. And now I can analyze it quite nicely to see that Excel 101, the overall progress is 85.5, but that is split between 85.3% progress in Doha. We've got 85.4 in Francistown. We've got 83.8 in Gaborone. Joburg is actually leading this particular one, 86.8, and then 86.1 in Lagos. So this is really nice. It's split it up by city. You can also take city into the filters, and this is an overall report filter. Okay. Why does it say all over there? Because we are displaying the overall summary for all the cities. I click in that filter button, I can filter, for example, Gaborone. Okay, click OK. And there we go. We see the summary for Gaborone only. What happens if you want to see Botswana? So you want to see Gaborone and Francistown, you would click over here, select multiple items, and then we can click on the two items or two cities that are both in Botswana. Click OK, and there we go. Our data updates. But we do see that we've got multiple items in brackets. So it's not so easy to see at a glance which are the multiple items. We can't see at a glance. We would need to go in there and have a look. So one of the primary uses of a pivot table is actually to present to colleagues or clients, to present a summary. So if we're presenting this, not such an effective presentation if we can't actually see what are we looking at, which cities are we looking at. So that's where slices come in. So on the Pivot Table Analyze tab, we've got this awesome feature. You're absolutely going to love it. It's called Slicer, and it says use a slicer to filter data visually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that button, and I can insert slices on one or multiple different fields. For now, I'm going to stick to just city. I'm going to click OK, and you can see that here is my slicer. I can change the position, the size, and the shape of the slicer. And I see that it's showing me now visually that Francistown and Gaborone are selected, which is fantastic. If I want to change to Doha, I can just click. Okay, how do I select more than one? I can either hold down the control button and click, or I can actually click on that button which says multi-select. And then it's going to select multiple as I go. I just need to click. Okay, and then I can click again to or deselect that particular item. And I can also clear the filter. And you can see that there's some keyboard shortcuts like Alt-C, for example, to clear the filter. So there we go, Alt-C. Okay, as is the case with a table and a pivot table, you can easily change the style. You can make it quite nice. There we go, nice and dark blue to match the pivot table. And that's very nice indeed. Now, because I've reduced the size, I've now got a scroll bar, so I might want to make it a little bit bigger so that everything can fit. Okay, so it's now 10:54. We have just over 5 minutes to go. And what I want to show you in the next couple of minutes, and Avi, feel free to turn on your camera and add anything from your side, but I think it would be very useful in the last few minutes to actually show you how to convert a pivot table into a pivot chart. A chart is a great way to display a summary visually, so we can see. Very often a picture tells 1,000 words. It's nice to see the data in the form of a picture or a chart. Okay, if we were to go to our data and try and convert this into a chart, it's going to be a big mess. It's probably going to freeze Excel, because Excel doesn't know how to take 8,366 lines of data and easily convert it into a chart. So that's why we convert into a pivot table in this case, and then we can quickly and easily convert it into a pivot chart. We go to the Analyze tab, we hover our cursor over pivot chart, and you can see it says insert a pivot chart tied to the data in this pivot table. Okay, so I'm going to click on pivot chart, and what you'll notice over here is it gives me a recommendation that it's recommending that I use a column chart. And in this case, it is a good recommendation because these courses or these items over here are independent. It's not continuous data. If we had continuous data like over time, a share price or an exchange rate over time, then we would have a line graph. But here we've got independent items, and therefore we're going to use a column chart. But I'm going to use a 3D clustered column just to make it a little bit more interesting. And I'm going to click OK. And there's my chart. And straight away, I can see that Excel 101 is the tallest skyscraper. 303 is the shortest. I've got total over here. I've got total over there. Not very useful. Don't need this one. Okay, that's the key. And instead of total, I'm going to click and I'm going to type average workshop progress. Okay, I'm going to press Control S and save my work. And just to notice once again that we have a few different contextual tabs. Here we've got the pivot chart analyze tab. We also have a refresh button, slicer, okay, and a few other buttons as well. We've got the design tab. I personally like this. Okay, this particular style is quite nice in my opinion. Okay, that looks quite nice and interesting. I could change the color. If I click on one of the skyscrapers, it's selecting all of them. But if I want to change the color of this one, XL202, I might want to change the whole color scheme, or I can go to format and I can change the full color. So I might want to fill this in green, and I can also change the outline maybe to a dark green. I can do a similar thing for XL303. Might want this to be in light yellow and the outline to be in dark yellow. And then for Outlook Secrets, I can change the fill to a light orange and the outline to a dark orange. And I think that looks quite nice. Okay, the next thing I want to show you briefly is that on the latest versions of Excel, so I think as long as you're using Excel 2013 or a later version, you should have the plus button over here where it shows you the chart elements. So as an example, you can put in grid lines or the legend. Don't need the legend because we've got the labels. Okay, you might want a data table to actually show you the figures, or data labels, which actually show you the numbers, okay, above the skyscrapers. So that's quite nice as well. And this is a quick way to format the style and the color. So it does the same thing as the features on the ribbon, but just a quick way to get to these features. And if we right click on the chart, we have the ability to move the chart. We might want to move it to another sheet tab. Okay, so we can move it to a new sheet tab. And what that will do is put it over there. And then just to make it a little bit more user-friendly, we can click on any specific area, and we might want to increase the font size. This font size is 9 for the label, so it's a bit small. So we can increase the font size to 14 and do the same thing over here. Increase these labels to 14. We can increase these labels also. I'm going to move this above the roof of the skyscraper over here, just because it's getting a bit cut off. And I'm going to increase the font size. I'm going to hold down Control. In fact, there we go. Now it's selected all 4 of them, and I'm going to increase them to font size 12. Okay, and that's quite nice. And this is really set up in such a way that's nice and presentable. If I want to remove the ribbon or hide the ribbon, I can double click on one of the tabs, or I can click over here, which says collapse the ribbon. And now it's coming up almost full screen. If I wanted to print this, I can press Control and P. Okay, and that's really nice because you can see it's laid out really nicely for a piece of paper. So I can send it to the printer and it's going to come out looking really nice and professional. Press escape to get out of there. I can get my ribbon back if I double click on one of the tabs. Okay, and I also might want to change the name to Pivot Chart, the name of this sheet tab. So now I have my 3 sheet tabs. I'm going to save my work, and I'm mindful of the time. It is 11 o'clock. We are going to stick around for a couple of extra minutes because there's a few extra things that we want to talk to you about. So let us make sure that we've saved our work. A reminder that this session is being fully recorded, so it's a great idea to refresh and recap, go over this all again in your own time and at your own pace. And speaking of in your own time and at your own pace, you'll be very glad to know that if you are potentially interested in further training for you and or maybe for your team as well, maybe you work as part of a team, then we have these 4 Excel courses. So these 4 courses that you saw here in the data, Excel 101, 202, and 303, as well as Outlook Secrets, and they are available to you. And they are online and lockdown friendly. So you can actually go through the material in your own time and at your own pace from the comfort and the safety of your own home or your office. Okay, if you're at home, you might want to wear your slippers while you do it. Okay, and we'd love to know if you would like us to contact you to give you some more information and have a conversation about further training for your team or for you. We have these 3 Excel courses. The material is actually structured in a really fun, colorful, interactive format. You can see this is the Excel 101 workbook, which everybody gets. You get this either a physical copy or a digital download, and you can see that it's interactive, it's fun. There's video numbers which correspond to the videos. So you work through the workbook and you work through the videos, you do the Excel exercises, just like in this masterclass. It's really practical and we learn by doing and by repeating. There's also some multiple choice quizzes along the way on the platform and an assessment at the end. So you will qualify, once you complete the course and the assessment, you qualify for an official certification as well, which is very nice. You can put that certification on your CV or on your LinkedIn profile, or you can print it out and hang it up on your wall. And most importantly, as was the case during this masterclass, we're all about giving you practical, relevant, and valuable tips and techniques and tricks to help you to work smarter. We've been doing this for over 7 years. We're fortunate and proud that we've trained tens of thousands of people in South Africa and across Africa and even beyond. And yeah, we are grateful as well that our delivery method was geared for lockdown. So exactly a year ago, as we went into lockdown, for me and Avi, we were relatively relaxed because we knew that we had an online solution and people would be able to access our training from the safety of their own home. Okay, in case you're wondering what's covered in each course, Excel 101, by the way, we will send you more info. It's great to see that 63% of you would actually like more info. So we will definitely get in touch with you. And yeah, just to talk briefly, Excel 101 is really about the foundation, the fundamentals, the 4 skills, the building blocks of Excel, really getting that foundation nice and solid, learning the building blocks of formulas and functions, and keyboard shortcuts, and working with data and formatting your data. In Excel 202, we look at advanced Excel skills. Okay, so a lot of what we covered today is covered in Excel 202, plus a whole lot more. So we look at formulas such as a VLOOKUP. We look at manipulating our data using, for example, concatenate, text to columns, the trim function, upper, the upper, the lower, those types of formulas and functions. Okay, we deal with conditional formatting. Okay, we also look at using data validation. So there really is a fortune of content which is extremely useful in Excel 202. And then in 303, we look at macros and VBA. So we learn how to automate our work and automate repetitive tasks and repetitive processes through the use of macros and VBA, which is the secret programming language of Excel. I say secret because a lot of people don't actually know about it, but it is there and it works with Excel and it's really doable. You don't need to be a programming whiz. Okay, you just need to be quite confident when it comes to Excel skills, and preferably you need to have completed our Excel 101 and 202 courses before progressing to 303. Each of the courses builds on the previous. So 202 builds on what we've learned in 101, and it's really a learning journey. Okay, so once again, a huge thank you to all of you. A huge thank you to the team at Mazars for all of your help in hosting this session with us and helping to promote the session. Thank you to Avi for all of your help as well in providing all of the info into the chat section. I'm going to leave this webinar open. I know that the time is 11:05 here in South Africa at the moment. So if you do want to leave, then you're most welcome to leave. We're not going to be covering any more Excel content today, but I will stick around for a couple of minutes just to see if there are any final thoughts or questions. Before you do go, we'd love to hear what you thought. Maybe you can pop us a message in the chat. Let us know what was your biggest takeaway from today's session. Which shortcut or technique did you love the most? Or was it everything? Did it blow your mind? Are you really feeling excited and inspired to take your skills to the next level? Okay, Paula Kemi, great to know that you're feeling super excited.
Okay, some of you might be surprised to know I do have a voice. First time you're hearing it. If anyone is interested in signing up as an individual, Dan, is there anything they can do? They just want to sign up right now, straight away as an individual.
Very good question. Thank you, Avi. So that's a great question. And you'll be glad to know that if you actually go to the same page on our website, I'm going to share it with you. What you'll see here is there's now a red button, okay, where you can click here to view our courses, and you can use this particular code, which is Pivots March 2021, and you can save 70% of our workshops. If I click that button, what you'll see over here is that it takes you to the plans and pricing page. You can see here that we've got a 60% code for the general public, but you are not part of the general public because you've been part of this masterclass, and therefore you qualify for an additional 10% off. As you can see, the prices are denominated in US dollars. Okay, and as an example, if you wanted to sign up to Excel Uni, that means all 3 of our Excel courses as well as the Outlook Secrets course. You can click Buy Now and Save, and then it will ask you if you have a coupon code. Pivots March 2021. It's actually not case sensitive. If we click apply, then there we go. It actually cuts it down by 75%. Okay, you get a bonus 5%. Actually, there was a typo on the button. Instead of 70%, you're getting 75% off, and you simply pay the $150 US. You put in your email address, your country, and you check out with PayPal. Either if you have a PayPal account, you can use a PayPal account, or you can actually just simply use your credit card to check out. Okay, it's a great question. Thank you for asking. Abby, I actually didn't see your camera on. I only saw myself in full screen the whole time, so I thought that your camera was off. Okay, but thank you for all of your help. Any comments or thoughts, questions, jokes?
Yeah, it was nice to be here. I was in the background, but I was helping and answering questions and posting shortcuts. Looks like people loved it, and I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it and got a lot of value. Keep practicing. A few people asked about accessing a recording. We will be sending that out so you can practice and go over it. Many of you said that you'd like us to get in touch with you, so we will be reaching out to you, and we can set up some time to chat and discuss our workshops and how we can help you. But from our side, yeah, just grateful for the opportunity. Thanks to Mazars for the platform. Thanks to Dan. Thanks to you. And we look forward to staying in touch.
Great stuff. Thank you, Avi. Thank you, everybody. We're going to close up the Zoom. As we said, we will send the YouTube link, so you'll have access to the recording. I think you will get a follow-up email from the team at Mazars with all the information that you need. So, and in addition, there should be more sessions coming up soon, hopefully in the next few months, some more free training. So stay tuned for that. We look forward to seeing you back here on Zoom. And until then, take care and stay safe as always. And we'll see you soon.